Number one, one of the bigger reasons that I've chosen to remain a virgin is because the value that I've gained to see behind purity. And of course, we can point this to my belief systems, where I came from, right? The things that I was scared to walk into at first, because I didn't want to experience God in a negative way, right? Like, I didn't really want to experience the God that people painted in my eyes or in my mind if I were to take a left turn and experience sex outside of marriage, right? Have a baby, all those kinds of extremes that we could get into that are available when experiencing sex, right? And so at first those motives were, yeah, I'm just too afraid to do it, right? Like, it's out of fear. As I continue to mature and grow, and especially grow in my relationship with Christ, I started learning the real value behind sex and why scripture tells us, Paul writes to us, that sexual immorality is not just a sin against others, it's a sin against your own body. And that takes it a whole different lane, because now we're starting to see sex in a whole different light. And one of the first things that helped me recognize that I was seeing sex in the best perspective biblically was learning that sex is not sin. Like, sex does not equate to sin. Sex is actually a beautiful thing that God created, God ordained, and God designed. And more importantly, the attractions that I carry as a human being, this is all something that God wires within us. The horny emotions that we get, the high sex drive, wherever your sex drive is, right? If it's high, if it's low, if it's somewhere in between, like, all these things are designed within us as human beings. Like, the very fact that, getting sexually aroused, right? Experiencing horniness, experiencing being hard, women experiencing being wet, orgasms, like all these things. Like, God designed all of this, right? Like, this is not something that we should just be so quick to paint so negatively as a means of trying to keep people away from it. Because what we don't realize, and maybe this is where some of you might be, it's a struggle, because when you get married and it's all of a sudden supposed to be this light switch where it's like, okay, green light, you can go. It's like we almost imagine the honeymoon and the marriage to be that space where we just start just getting on top of each other and never getting off. And I have recalled, especially in my own journey, of married men who went on honeymoons and they didn't have sex the first night, honeymoon at all. And so, like, all these expectations that we carry, because it's hard to transition out of something you've been taught your entire life up to this point. You've been single for however long before you ended up getting married. And so it's hard for you to kind of ease into that space, because now all of a sudden what you were taught was so bad as a means of staying away. People are now like, well, what's wrong with you? Why don't you want to have sex? So there's a whole different switch there. And so for me, one of the things that I have valued about my journey in being a virgin and remaining a virgin until marriage and being able to choose that is because I just learned and understood the value behind sex. God created it. God ordained it. It's a beautiful thing. God is not trying to rob you of your pleasures. And it's in the right proper context that God defines it for that actually allows me to flourish with the behavior. And it's not just me that's flourishing. It's my future wife that's flourishing. It's a space that where two become one, and it's actually a space of worship to God, because we're honoring God in the best way possible with what he's designed for us. And so when I started seeing that, it actually started changing the way that I looked at women, started changing the way I looked at people. One of the things that really helped me transition from the pornography addiction I had, that allowed me to see women as products and not people, was one, I started asking God to really deal with my heart. Okay, Lord, help me to see women and value people the way you do. And as I started noticing, and as I continued to go to public places, gyms, class, seeing all these beautiful women walk by in tights and yoga pants. And at one point or another, I'm just like, oh, snap, I'm all distracted from my lift, because, fam, she is bad. I mean, she is fine wine. Oh, my Lord, honey dip got a thing, I'm just cooking, right? Just doing all those things. What really helped me wasn't the bouncing of the eyes. It wasn't the, oh, I'm going to act like and pretend that person isn't there, right? Or get all nervous and jittery. No, actually, what helped me was, one, being honest about what I'm acknowledging here. Yeah, she is beautiful. Oh, yeah, 1,000%. The curves and all, it's there. And I love it for her. And this girl also has a vision, has a dream, has challenges, has a whole different calling and assignment on her life. And more importantly than anything, is a daughter of the Most High. And that helped me really start to see the value that women carried that went so far beyond whatever I thought they could do for me sexually. And I think when we think like that, it definitely leads us to places of extreme selfishness, narcissism at the very least. I know that's a huge proper term, and we'll get into that at some point too when we're talking about healing through relationships, because we use that term a lot, and good Lord. So I don't want to necessarily use that so often here, but I do think it can be applicable here, because all we do is we continue to save face as a means of trying to protect some fake identity we're carrying. And I think, it really speaks to the extreme selfishness of the human heart when we say, hey, this person, I'm going to box into a manner where they can only please me. This whole idea of God made you for me. Like, that statement is so asinine. And even though a lot of times we might know what you're referring to as lovebirds and romantic relationships, honeymoon phases, and you're just so in love, head over heels, I think the statement in and of itself is extremely selfish to believe that God only made this person just for you. Like, this person has no other assignment, no other purpose, no other motive to their existence outside of pleasing you. That is such a dangerous place to be, and it's very unhealthy. Okay. And so I think, for me, asking those things in prayer, being in time in prayer, dealing with that, but then also applying it, the temptations didn't stop coming, right? It's not like I didn't stop seeing the beautiful women. I didn't stop having those thoughts. No, it was just, okay, what am I going to continue to combat those things with? Okay, let me recenter, let me refocus, let me stop pouring my energy into holding on to this thought and clinging on to it and allowing it to grow bigger and bigger and bigger, to push me to extreme sides of lusting activity, masturbation, pornography, all those kinds of things, or trying to fantasize about this person, now turning them into an object, no longer seeing them as a person in the image and likeness of God. Now I'm able to look at it and I'm able to let go of that image. I'm able to let go of whatever thought I was carrying and then recenter and say, yo, but that person just there's so much more to their life, to their story, who they are, their challenges, their struggles, their issues. And so, like, that's not just a body. That's a human being. It's a spirit. That's a soul. Like, and we should honor that. Right. And so after many, many reps, and there were many times where it was like, man, it was difficult. It was challenging. But then the more I did it and the more I kept challenging that programming, the better it got, to where now it's not even something that I struggle with in the sense of me looking at women as objects. No, because it requires me to get in proximity to people to put context to them, because without proximity, I just treat them as objects and not as people God created them to be. So now when I actually sit down in front of a woman, I actually am able to get in the proximity of a woman that maybe is attractive to me. It gets difficult for me to put them in a box and try to think of how they can please me, because I'm actually getting context to who they are as a person. Hearing their story, it humanizes them. And anytime we don't humanize people, we miss context. And anytime we don't humanize people and miss context, we start giving ourselves permission to treat them as objects instead of the people God designed them to be. And that's always a struggle. And so for me, that's the first thing, right? Like, I began to understand the value of sex and the value of people. And that helped me change my whole entire thinking on what sex actually is. Okay. It's not just for self-pleasure. Like, yes, I could experience pleasure in the midst of that. However, it's not something that I'm supposed to violate humanity in order to have in any kind of way. Right. And I think this also speaks to many people who maybe feel like watching this, I've had my innocence taken away from me. Like, it wasn't my choice that I'd lost my virginity. Like, that stuff was taken from me. And wow, that's such a huge weight. And I don't even know if I have the bandwidth right now to talk to that, as much as I think just making room for that at this conversation. I really think that is probably the first thing that I would land on that has helped me continue to choose to remain a virgin until I get married. What's happening, fam? Thank you so much for tuning in to this video. If you want to watch the full replay of this entire conversation, I'm sure it's popped up somewhere on this screen, so be sure to click that. But also, if you guys are interested in joining a free safe space for men community designed to help you heal and get your life back on track in 4 dimensions of faith, relationships, energy, and economics, click the link in the description below and be sure to sign up and join in this community so we can connect and get back on track to getting you back. Be easy.